Hello, welcome to this first discussion of The Fugitive Prince. This is the fourth book in the Wars of Light and Shadow series by Janny Wurts. We are reading this book 3 chapters at a time, I believe, and we're discussing them every 2 weeks. There is a lot going on in the first 3 chapters, so we might be here for a while today. Yeah, I have the usual squad with me. Chibi Pearl, would you like to get us started off with introductions?
Oh, of course. I am Chibipo. I hang out on the page chewing forums and uh, also putter around on Twitter. I'm still going to call it Twitter. I refuse you know to call it anything else. But I'm also started puttering around on the non-bird app.
Mm,
The Blue Sky one. So I got one for that. So.
mm.
Pick someone at random. Robin. Yeah, we'll pick Robin next because she hasn't been here in about.
Just utter chaos going on. Yeah. Robin from Begins and Biscuits, YouTube channel, small YouTube channel who has the same name. Oh my gosh. I can also be found on Twitter /X and also Instagram as well. I cannot believe we're on book 4. That seems ridiculous. So yeah, quite excited because as you said, so much happened in this first chapters. I'm gonna sorry, Chris, now you've been skipped. I'm handing off to Jared.
Jared, the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and I also hang out in the page chewing forums where I do a blog there as well for Creative Crossroads, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, this book is a lot of fun. The bang to start off with, Chris.
Well, thanks very much, Jared. That's very nice of you to Before my name is Chris Mohan, sometimes YouTuber, sometimes person that appears in other people's channels and talks about books. And yeah, I can't believe, one, that it's book 4, and 2, that there's so many books to go. Like, I don't think my brain can cope with the amount of information it has to ingest on even on a bi-weekly basis. This is ridiculous.
It is. You would think 3 chapters is easy. That's what I thought. And even with the reduced font size, it's 130 pages. What? how long could it possibly take to read? I was spending, I don't know, no joke, 3 to 4 minutes on each page, and and highlighting every other paragraph. And there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's funny because I'm like, we had so much happen in the past 2 books, and you're like, how can she keep it going like this? And she does. It's incredible that she's still giving us a bunch of stuff happening and a bunch of information too at the same time, and all in that extremely exquisite descriptive prose at the same time, and it's really beautiful thing to read.
I had some. Sorry, go ahead, Robin.
No. I was just gonna say I fully back up, Jared. It feels really weird because it's like, this is gonna sound like a really stupid explanation, but it's like a French plait where you start with a tiny plait and then she's like weaving other bits into the story as you're going along and like continuing it down and adding more in, and it's just like, it's so beautiful to read and like take it all and see it all coming in. Because you're right, I just didn't know how that story was gonna last for this amount of time, but you can just see how she's just adding and adding and adding and adding, and it's just working so well at the moment. I'm just loving it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Varsha.
I was gonna say the prose felt like, I mean, of course, we've been enjoying Janny Wurts' writing for the last 3 books, but did this feel somehow amped up to you guys? Like, everything was so beautiful. I had to like put my book down and just think about the scenery for a bit. It felt like having a painting described to you or watching a painting happen as it unfolded. There were so many beautiful descriptions here, and I had some really beautiful dreams over the last week because I was reading this before I fell asleep. But I thought it was so beautiful. All the descriptions were so beautiful. Maybe some of it was carryover from our reading of The Gallant, because at the time we got a sense of just how beautiful this planet is and how fantastic the Paravians are and how amazing the Paravian portions of the planet are. Maybe some of it was carried over from there. Like I had the base feeling of beauty around this planet, but the descriptions, they were so pretty. Everything felt so pretty.
Like the whole bit where she's on the horse, early on, going over to the farmhouse for the, to help the pregnant mom,
Mhm.
and just the description of it, it's dark and snowy and and everything, and you can just see her, huddled on the horse with the boy,
Yeah.
who there to like night sky out, and I was like, this is really really well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, the director in me was like, "Oh, I want to film that scene." That was, it was so perfectly described that it was like, I could definitely see that on a film.
Yeah. Exactly. I was thinking of movies as I was watching, as I was reading this, because there's like there's the use of environment. There's a storm brewing in the background when something difficult is being explained, or there was just like so much use of environment and other signals when things were happening in the scene. So I'm really excited to read the rest of the book.
These books have this incredible quality, because I read this all this week, right? This is just in the past week, and you get to the end and you're going back through and you're trying to think, right, what happened in the previous chapter. So when I go to talk about the Sunday, I'll kind of remember what it was. And like you said, like that first chapter about Laura, I was like, that was this book. that wasn't like an Vastmark or something, it has this quality. As soon as you read something that gets put into the history of the world, like immediately, it has like a permanence in it. And I don't know how you achieve that, or how you even set about to do that, but it was every time we come to read another set of chapters, you're like, oh my god, just 30 pages ago.
And Chibi Po, as beautiful as that scene was and how well it's described, wasn't it such a kick in the gut that Alara had to make that choice? About this newborn baby. She had to choose like a prophecy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she'll have choices to make later, but
right. Yeah, but the prophecy revealed,
the act of saving this child has, put a great big mess in front of her hands that she's going to have to deal with sometime.
Yeah, which includes,
and boy, is she going to.
Yeah, which includes the fate of the world. Basically, that's what they're saying to her.
Yep.
And it's just like, oh, just a small burden on my shoulders, no big deal.
I thought it was such a great opening to the book, though, because it was kind of like it wasn't with either of the brothers, so it was like this little cutout that was almost an aside to the main story of like, this is also happening over here with that gorgeous description and everything else, and this big like prophecy, and then it just like, and then you're back to the main story, and you're like, wait, what? Oh my god, what happened? What? So that was a brilliant opener to the book. It was really, really good.
Was nobody else like super angry though at the story, to the options that she was given? Like, she did a good thing and was sort of punished for it. It's not the way things are supposed to happen. Like, you go out of your way, you kind of do the right thing, you be the better person, and then, oh, by the way, something you're gonna have to pick something terrible in some which way as retribution for your good act. That's so unfair.
All the options she was presented with were horrible. Each was worse than the other.
Not right.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't know, just to like touch on the feeling like it's all cinematic, movie thing. Just that opening bit too, where she's waking up, because someone's beating on her door, and she's in the middle of her dream/nightmare, and from remembering stuff from when she was in Marior, and I'm just like, yeah, I would totally see this as just like this cinematic opening where she's just kind of laying there tossing and turning, and it's flashing back and forth, dream wise between her tossing and turning and the dream, and I'm like, yeah. And then she wakes up and she's just like, I hate everything. She's like, I'm out in the middle of nowhere. It's cold. It's, everything's damp. There's snow everywhere and nothing's dry.
Oh yeah, I did not want to put her
Someone's
clothes
banging on my
on.
door in the middle of the night.
Yeah. When she was describing like having to put her wet shoes back on, I was like, oh no. Oh, it's
No,
the worst.
Yeah. And the poor horse having to deal with the dampness of her clothes too. But yeah, it just all felt so real. That's the other thing. I can't remember the last time I read like this, where I just felt every time I stopped, it was like I had to wrench myself out of what I was reading. And like, oh wait, well, I thought I was supposed to be in a theater. What am I doing here? Yeah. Yeah, that was a good opening scene. What else?
And I know it'll be kind of morbid, but I liked, just the whole process of how she handled things after the birth was, accomplished. And, she's just like, okay, I've got to clean, out the child's lungs. And, it's kind of gruesome, but I liked, you can tell that like Janny researched how they would have done something like that.
Sure.
She got the little,
Yeah.
glass tube and everything, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of gross, but I love the attention to detail there.
Yeah.
But it also led to some, again, gruesome but graphic and beautiful explanations of the kind of the illness and the sickness and the stuff, the changing of the color of the liquid and stuff, and all of that kind of stuff that I think, again, is really visual for you as the reader to kind of tap onto and actually say, right, this is the effect she's having and stuff. And it's just, again, another great example of how you can write descriptive, but if I was to write descriptive, I would end up by the fourth book kind of going, right, let's use the metaphor about the grass and the wind, right? And just recycle that one again and again. And nothing ever feels recycled in this, ever. It always feels very fresh and very new,
Yeah.
Yeah, like after she finishes it, where the baby who, hasn't, taken any breath yet, and his skin's kind of, grayish and whatnot, but as he starts breathing and the color, starts flushing back in because of oxygen and all, and I'm like, okay, this is really well done.
Yeah. She uses birds, the play of light, I guess the snow, everything is beautifully described. Yeah. See, when you're talking about something that has so much variance, and then I have to resort to the same 3 words over and over.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it just makes it more incredible that what she's doing, because this is, these books, there are thousands and thousands of words, and she's not repeating herself, and she's not taking any shortcuts at all, and it shows.
Yeah. Does anyone else think that the fate of the kid will be tied to Arathon's, because he's probably going to look a lot like him? I mean, because of the prophecy, but also, the moment of shock she had when his father came into the house and thought this was Arathon. Do you think the resemblance might be what brings that fate about?
Possible. But we know that it is tied to Arathon in some way, because the seeress outright mentions it. That because I've got it marked here. What's it say? Should he die on salt water, the one ye love, most falls beside him. Should he die landbound in cross steel and smoke, the same one ye cherish survives, but betrayed. And then, yet should this child's days extend to old age. Should he die in fire, none suffers but he. Forgot about that one. Should this, child's days extend to old age, first of 5 kingdoms, and the whole world will plunge into darkness, never to see sunlight or redemption. You're burdened to choose in the hour of trial, Faradon Lee, and this, child's to give the natural death or the sacrifice.
Fun choices. That question I have: where is Alara in the world at this point?
Is she in Arathura? Is that the name of the place? I did wonder what that was.
I have no
Because-
idea because it opens with her just waking up in the hut. I'm not sure how
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
discussion or the description you get of where she is actually in the world or how
Yeah.
she got there.
The last line of the prophecy says, "Let his training be for the sword, for his path takes him far from Arithra." I sort of assume that's the name of the place, but I don't know where
Yeah.
on the map that is.
Oh, I can look it up later. I was just kind of
Mhm.
curious where
Yeah.
she's at compared to, compared to where Lysay is at and Arathon's at and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's grass plains in southwest Rathane, apparently, according to the gloss.
Yeah, like it's hard to see on the map in the book because of the map being a split there, but you can kind of see the name like in the basically middle of the two pages. So it's like it's somewhere in there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I see it.
Okay.
Nothing else is decipherable on the map, but I see it. Yeah.
And it's so funny because when I was a much younger reader, I would have nearly had the map with another finger when I was reading the whole time, nearly like putting pins for all the characters in the place. And I don't do that
there
at
it is.
all anymore. Yeah.
Well, I have
thing.
I got the website open right now. That's why I'm
Right,
looking at
okay.
the map.
Yeah, it's like if I need that, I go to because you can zoom in and everything. It's really handy.
So what did you used to do with the information, Chris, of who's on the map and where? Because I don't think I ever read with the map open. So I was curious what people who constantly look at the map do with it.
It would be part of starting any chapter or any part of the story to kind of go, right, we're jumping back to this character and this is where they are, and flicking back to the map all the time and saying, right, in relation to other people around the place, I always had to know where people are. And I don't know where that went, if you know what I mean, like because it definitely doesn't bother me at all anymore. Like I'm just kind of like a rough geographic region of whether people are close to each other or not is enough. And in this case, like Arathon's kind of he's going away.
Yeah. He's nowhere near here. Even though, I mean, she had me for a second there. I thought, didn't Arathon have other plans? But yeah, sure, why not? Maybe he happened here by chance. So, like for 3 seconds, I was like, wait, that's Arathon. But then, no, it was.
That's right.
Black hair, green eyes isn't. Sorry, Jimmy.
I was going to say there's one coming up, and I just, when I'm reading it, I just have to have the map open because I'm just following where the character is going because, it's a crazy, wild ride, and I'm like, okay, I'm just following on the map as he goes.
Yeah, I like to use the maps for like traveling, especially, just to keep track of where they are and stuff. It helps me visualize it.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
All right, what do we got next? Oh yeah.
Well, next we had Lysaya was playing some politics next, right?
Yes. The ambassador from Havish returning the stolen gold.
Yes, and then we had that arrow come into the meeting.
That's right.
That's when that happened, right?
I liked with the the ambassador has been forewarned that Isaiah will do his utmost to turn your opinion, but you must not under any circumstances fall sway or bring Havish's involvement in. And Isaiah's just like anything that the guy says is Isaiah's just like bam 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 bam, just like clockwork. I've got to disparage Arathon and his everything that he did. And
yes.
Can I ask a question, because I might be being a bit slow here, but where does the Havish Empire or city or wherever link back to in the previous ones? Have we met that bit? I've just lost that connection completely.
Well, we met King Eldir at the beginning of Ships, because that was where Dakar got himself knifed and got sent off to help Arathon. And then they handled the facilitation of the ransom for Lady Talith in the last book.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
But they want to, they want to keep their autonomy though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And love that line in here that says, the price of their protection from the spinner of darkness might come at the cost of their coveted autonomy.
Mm.
And that's what you were saying about them telling the ambassador, that be very careful with this guy. I thought that was a great line. It was great how Lysaea was trying to play up those politics. Even when like the arrow came in, he tried to turn that around, and tried to use it against, for his own purposes, against the people that were there at the table and stuff like that.
He's obviously so clever though, because even with the ambassador, like the ambassador was just trying to leave. He's like, I'm just not going to get involved in the discussions, blah, blah, blah. And let's say even makes it so that he gets caught up in that meeting that he doesn't want to be involved in, is trying to leave from. And it makes it seem like an accident, but it's obviously all orchestrated timing wise and everything else. So he's just very good at what he does, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the arrow scene with the... I can't remember the title of the dude, but yeah, that was done very, very well. I was very nervous for that kid a long time. For most of that chapter, I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, thought he was a goner.
100%. Yeah, I was just like, "Oh no."
But what do you guys think about him not accepting the crown, and how is that going to play into the future conflict here?
It's just an evil ploy, obviously.
Like the ambassador says, it's theater. He's he's not actually giving anything up. Yeah. He's just letting them think, that they, that he has, and they're just gonna, and then by the time they realize that, it's like, oh hey, we actually are being ruled, they're like, oh, well, okay. They'll have already, everybody will be used to it, and then he's just like, yeah, that's right.
I kind of feel like the point is going to be that everyone's going to be begging him to be king, and that's when he'll take it. Not just because he needs to have it or anything else. They'll be like, "Oh, you must be king because of this, this, and this." And he'll be like, "Oh, all right," that kind of thing instead.
But it also plays into this growing theme. It's always been there, but it's definitely grown that Lysaea needs to feel adulation. He revels in the adulation. He needs to feel that he is important and all of that kind of stuff. And like this chapter starts a cycle for me where I was trying really hard to like Lysaea at the start of the book. Like I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but he's still a douchebag. Like, yeah, I was really trying to thought, yeah, we've a new book, we've got a shiny cover, there's no creases in it, nobody's broken any spines yet. We're everybody gets a fresh start, and he's just like proper douchebag.
He's yeah. And
well, it's like it is a new arc, but I like that it doesn't forget what happened before.
Yeah.
And we have just like you can see the impact of what Vastmark's had done to Lysaea, where back in Ships and Warhost, he had been emphatic that no man stands as and serves in Avenor as a slave.
Oh
yeah, he turned around and killed them, but now he's just like, yeah, okay,
what a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Well, they're
absolutely.
now. Let him do, and it's all Erethan's fault.
Yeah, he's like the absolute like fake news that he believes.
Oh yeah,
and that and the lies he throws out as truth. It's so brazen, and yet these people are still falling under his spell, and it's funny because he has there's a part later on, I think it's in chapter 2 or 3, where he has questions for the sorcerers, and they're questions that we had too while we were reading this book, and so it's not just the stuff he believes that he's pushing and the lies that he's pushing. It's not just coming out of nowhere. They're questions. They're legitimate questions, but he's twisting them for his political advantage, obviously.
But go, Chris, go.
I was going to say, but even Sethvir says that, he's saying a lot of stuff, and he's not necessarily wrong. I think he admits to that kind of right towards the very end of saying, like, he is, like you say, Jared, he's very twisted in what way he thinks, but it doesn't dismiss that his concerns or his questions aren't without value and without merit, But he's just coming from that place of being an asshole at the same time, so it's very hard to give them as much credence as probably they would be if they came from Marathon.
Yeah.
Well, and it also runs into, since we. Oh, sorry, Robin, you go ahead.
No, it's good. It's good.
But it runs into, and we get more of that here with during the hearing at Althane Tower when we get to that, but that the fellow what the rules here are, and everything, he just thinks he can just toss them aside, for his own convenience. And the fellowship no, there's very specific, they don't elaborate on every reason why, but there's very specific reasons why these rules are here. And okay, well, you'll be explicitly told why they have to maintain crown rule and whatnot in the next book very early on. So we're going to find out very soon. Relatively,
It's going to say it's going to be a while.
2.5 months, they'll be fine.
But we're gonna find that out, and but like I said, he just feels like, oh, I can just whatever, these rules make no sense to me, and he doesn't really even want to understand them. He's just like, I think these are stupid, so I'm going to toss them aside for my own convenience. And it's like, not a good idea.
So I think. Sorry, go ahead, Robin.
Oh my gosh. just one thing I want to say, that's it, and then we can move on. I was just going to say it basically. My thoughts on this area is like, I keep feeling like she's trying to bring us around. Like when you see her talking about how, well, I don't know now, like you see him talking to all his followers and all the page boys and all everything else, and he's super lovely and he looks the part and he's doing all of this stuff, but I still think he's an asshole. And I'm like, I don't know if that's in the beginning of this book, she's framing the setup so that you think he's an asshole and maybe it becomes more redeemable, or if actually I'm just like, actually I don't like this dude because all this stuff happened, and I'm not just taking on board that actually he's also a nice guy in some aspects, because I just cannot stand him. So I don't know.
See, interesting that point, because I think that's narratively why you need the scene with the scrying with Traith. To say, actually, to get into the mind of him. Is it just the curse just doing this? Because as a reader, I think we all have that exact same thought. And that scene gets put in to say, actually, no, it is not just the curse. It is part of his ego and all of the other stuff. He has a feeling of character. And they sort of say the same thing about Arathon to a certain point, but Arathon's coming from a slightly different place of being the hunted and being excused for some of the things maybe that he's had to do, but that's very clearly set out that it isn't just the curse.
It's actually it's actually Traith that asked the question. He says, I need to ask, how much of Lysaea's acts arise from Deaththier's accursed instigation, and how much out of wayward self-will? And then Sethvir answers him, like, let me show you the aura, and there's a whole page there that describes his answer. But so that was and that's been a question we've been asking all along as well. So it was great. It was just so cool that a lot of questions we were asking along the way actually got asked in these first 3 chapters, and answered to some extent, as much as I think as much as that they could for the story being told. But I really like that, because it makes the characters in here feel more real, to know that they're asking the same questions we are,
Yeah,
very much so.
Yeah, just because you mentioned these parts and I had it open right here. Lysaeer had been cursed to kill his half-brother. The tenets of royal inheritance led him to endorse that violence with a just cause. But nestled inside his ardent need to protect society, an uneasy conscience spun new threads of gnawing uncertainty. Delusion entered, in a magisterial spark of arrogance fueled by outraged duty. Lysander clung to the vanity of his privileged royal upbringing, where the coil of self-perception shaped the ideals of principle. Obsession flowered, a hot, hazy spiral that corded through the aura like coils cast off a dropped spool. Sethfir shared the resonance of dismay through the link as Traith resolved his conclusion. Isaiah used his flaws to deafen his ears to harsh truth, a lordly, dark pride that brooked no humility before the misguided masses, a caring, honorable sovereign's undoing that measure of shame and stark horror. No other descendant of Halduin had lived to lead an innocent people to slaughter. That burdensome guilt crushed thought and will and gave rise to a desperate denial. Lysander refused outright to betray his Seleucid bloodline. He would not beg mercy and assign himself blame for 37,000 useless deaths. A penchant for self-sacrifice fueled that cord of victimized fury and reforged an unswerving purpose, an assurance as cool as a strand of steel filigree. Lysander chose his next course. For the sake of those who died carrying his banner, he would forbear his born generosity of spirit and embark on a more grandiose campaign. Marathon must become more than a criminal beyond pardon, but the instrument of evil incarnate. For the sake of past losses and grief, the man who styled himself Prince of the Light would not break down and cry weakness.
Yeah.
Yep.
There were also sort of overt clues to Lysa's, well, at least I read them as overt clues to what's Lysa, what's Mistrait. Like when everything about what he does, like his behavior with the page boy that you mentioned, Robin, all of them, they have a very performative aspect to it. Like it's not coming from within. He's putting on a show, and I think at some point they explicitly tell us that he's putting on a show. Every time he appears in public, he has to have all his regalia. He has to behave a certain way, and that doesn't stem from like caring for people. Like he's got an end goal of manipulating people into doing something that he wants. And the other thing is he talks that I highlighted this. There's something he says about beggars and bullion, or like what that they'll wait for it or something. And it just felt very condescending, like like they'll be there to take my goal. Like he didn't think much of the people he was quote unquote serving, right? So it's just hard to be sympathetic towards him. All of that, none of that has anything to do with Arathon, and yet he seems to be pretty uncaring towards his people. So like, he's hard to like even without knowing that some of his behavior is mistakes, others not.
Yeah. No, I think even just the art of putting on a show and manipulating people and not caring to the point of his wife. I think we're skipping ahead a little bit now. Maybe we can skip back to the other side. But even that whole thing with I've forgotten her name now, but that just made me like, oh my God, he's completely flipped with her. Like they were like, so well, was he ever in love with her really? But how he treated her.
Yeah.
From the fact that she just backed up and said, actually, Arathon may not be what you think he is, or you're kind of going down this path I don't agree with. Just from that, like that whole scene with her and him just absolutely kind of belittling her in front of all of those people, and then how he treats her, and then the little sneak peek you get at the very end. I was just like, oh my God, you can just totally see that exactly that. Like it basically puts forward that it's all just performative. He really doesn't care about anything else as long as his end goal is kind of reached.
Yeah.
And I thought that was another layer to that whole like craziness.
Yeah.
That whole scene made me so angry. I was like, oh my God, what an absolute, because a lot of it, it's funny because it's also a personal conversation for the two of them to have. They obviously haven't been having, but it's also a lot to do with the public perception of her. If she was to be with Baby now, then it could be said that it could be Arathon's or something, and he's all about public perception, not the fact that he wants an heir or that you have a baby out of love or anything. Like, that's not even in the conversation. And I know a lot of like royalty, even though he's not royalty, that is part of their life, but it was just so horrible. It was so cold, and it was just so uncaring.
I think it was so good as well. And I know I'm harking back to the other book, but because you get such an explanation of her feelings and thought processes from the previous things, to know that must have been just the fact that he's now just cut off cold turkey just must be such a like painful thing for her as well, because you've seen it. So it's just a beautiful, again, really well set up play and show of who he is as a person.
Yeah. And I think the parallels between Talit and Lysa's mother, we saw one scene where she was really upset with his father, and she's like, "Nah, I'm leaving. I'm not doing what you want." So the Fallon have compassion running through. These guys have justice, whatever form that takes.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like Lysa's father wasn't a very good person too, and he didn't treat his wife very well either. So I guess that's another clue. I read that also as another clue to Lysa's character. Most of it is not Mistress driven.
Yeah, at this point, it's almost like he's using the Mistress bit, and no, he's not aware of Mistress, but he's kind of using that to be a bad person.
Yeah, like free reign to do what he wants, right? So on a slightly lighter note, did anyone else feel like Lysa's hair is its own character?
I feel like it's getting lighter and lighter and lighter. It's like blonde and everything else. Now it's like white gold or something.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know what tell it says. You get older, your hair is supposed to get lighter.
I don't know what you mean.
Oh, yeah. No idea.
You know, he's. I know he was doing it at the end of Vestmark, and I think he's. You know, when he makes that big show, he's kind of using his power to make himself glow. When he walks around, because he's the Prince of the Light.
Yeah, it's got a halo and everything.
What a douche.
No.
Although if I could do it, I probably would. You know what I mean?
I want to impress. Who doesn't want to impress and awe everybody as you walk around?
Exactly.
Have your own halo, your own background music.
Well, walking in this music. Maybe we should do that for introductions next week. But when we introduce ourselves, we'll play a song. Right?
Oh, yes. I like that. I don't know how to make it work.
Like
Sorry, go ahead, Chibipo.
Arathon can do, illusions and whatnot, and shift colors and everything. So it stands to reason Lazeo should be able to do the same. So he could just not just a little halo. He could have just like rainbows, arcing across the sky behind him. Fancy, make little specks of light that look like rose petals falling down from the sky. He can do whatever he wants.
Don't give Johnny ideas.
Don't worry. She's done. It's okay.
Yeah. Late edit. I don't know. But the important thing about Talith and Lysair is actually it shows the strength of her character, really, is that she can actually disassociate her relationship with Lysair to what is her truth versus his truth, and actually use that as a mirror for each other in terms of the relationship. And there's no doubt, like we as the reader love Talith. I don't think there's anybody not totally wanting to see more of her chapter on chapter upon chapter.
Yeah. I think in the first book, or maybe early Ships of Mary, or Steve had mentioned, for Talit, it's I think there was something to the effect that Lysair will always put his hatred for Arathon above his love for her, and Steve was like, that doesn't sound like she's gonna have a very happy life. Man, are we seeing the repercussions of that?
Very true.
I am actually slightly worried for her, giving the very end, the last chapter, the 3 sections of what it kind of put in there. So I'm a little bit worried of how it's going to go for her, but hopefully we'll see more of that going forward. In a good way. Not that sounded really like foreboding. But
want to see her tied up. No, I am hopeful that she'll she'll find a way out of it, and we'll cheer for her at the end of it. Like, at least, yeah. I'm hoping that's where it'll go.
Ooh, I don't know.
No.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
7 more books of a war here.
Mm,
That's a tough hope.
that's true. So I'm expecting this to go on across 500 years because that's what the prologue told us. Elira's already been given long life. I wonder, Talit, how long she'll last. And
Oh yeah, that's a good
Good
question.
point.
Mhm.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
One of the things I like that Janny pointed out here was that, and this ties into how the book still connects to the previous 3 books, the practice of navigation on the sea, which was something that they hadn't used for 500 years on this continent because of the curse of the Mistwraith, because of everything was clouded over, what have you. And I like how that was pointed out in the first chapter here about it can't stay lost for much longer. So that's I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to come into play in future novels. I think that's just a little hint that there's going to be a lot more to this to navigating by starlight and the effects of the curse being removed.
Yeah.
And what that'll have on some of the characters and the countries.
No, definitely. But that's why I'm so invested in this as a series, because I love the fact that that Janny Wurts does this. Like, I think she planted that in one of the previous books, and it was just a note point of like the fact that he was traveling and they couldn't go far from the shore, and then it got left. Then it gets picked up again here, and you're like, aha, okay, yeah. And it's just super nice to have that kind of series view of it. It's really beautiful. It's really nice.
Yeah, I love that.
Makes it worth, like, I really want to get to the end to see how everything's picked up.
But it is that, and I've mentioned this before, but like sometimes when you're reading books and you go chapter to chapter, you go, right, in that chapter that one thing happened. In each one of these chapters, you have 3 big, massive events that happen, and then you get 3 snippets that seem even bigger every time, with what they promise. So you get like 6 pieces of massive information every chapter, and it's like, that's why I think sometimes I just go, I need to sleep. I'm a bit tired. I can't take any more of this today. If I start the next bit, that'll be 12. I can't do 12.
That's why you write it down first, and you get it out of your system, and then you move on.
Yeah.
So what's everyone's thoughts on Mirn?
Oh,
that's the
youngest Sabridian brother.
Yes. He's the one that's kind of like a spy, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I had a note on him somewhere here.
I think my initial thoughts, because obviously, again, in the last book, you find out that they're generally kind of going to be a spy, if you get me. Yep. And I was a little worried that they were playing it too open in the political game with Lysair, because and then you find out that actually, he definitely is fully working, not just being a background supporter, like fully working for it. And I was like, I'm a little worried that they're being too obvious from the discussions they were having in that political thing.
Yeah, I was worried about that too, but also there is, I guess, another explanation for why, because he isn't of the town people, right? He is technically a clansman, and he has to support them. And we've seen him do that, I think, in the previous books too, when they weren't really on Arathon's side. They had to obey clan law for certain things. So I figured that might be the interpretation of the townsfolk too, that since he's fundamentally an outsider to the group, he will disagree with them on some things.
It was also a very nice link to the previous book as well. Again, that idea that you're floating this idea of Sabridon, not the Sabridon brothers being in league and spying.
Yeah.
Not 8 chapters into the book, but kind of straight away to kind of say, look, this is always a very fluid situation, and this is actually what it would look like on a moment-to-moment basis, rather than just kind of like a big reveal somewhere further down the line. Again, they're very carefully planned and scripted.
Yeah, that's a great point. I also love that, like, this is the start of a new arc, but every thread we've picked up, right, that we left off at the end of the last book, we've picked it up almost immediately. We weren't kept waiting. Like, if we were particularly invested in one thread over the other, we're not going to have to wait until like 9 chapters to figure out.
Yeah, but
what happens.
there also wasn't any redundancy as far as rehashing
Yeah.
goes either.
Yeah.
You know, it was seamless, and I feel like you could almost pick this up as its own novel and start reading it and still not be too lost, but knowing that a bunch of history has gone on before it.
Yeah. Chibipo, you started somewhere in the middle, right? Was it, which book was it again?
I picked up, well, I was familiar with her, I'd read some of her other stuff before that, but I found Ships of Merior was the first Wars of Light and Shadow I read.
Yeah.
I found it in a grocery store, and they're, they have the mass market paperback section, and I happened to see the cover there, and I was like, oh, I know that artist, and I know that name, so I immediately grabbed it, and I have destroyed several paperbacks, reading and rereading this series. So, but yeah, I read that Ships first, and then Warhost, and I might have gotten Curse, picked up a copy of Curse at that point, and then I got Warhost. But I read book 2 first, and I didn't have any problems. I felt like, in some ways, I mean, I understand, I feel like, start with Ships first.
Yeah.
Wow.
It will spoil things for you for Curse, but
yeah,
at least to me, it just.
But not a lot. I feel like there's a lot. Like, the last parts of Curse of the Mistwraith were so beautiful, and none of that was really mentioned again or rehashed. Like, the whole bit with Arathon going body to body and saying a Paravian prayer, was it? That whole chapter was so brilliantly done. I'd read it again just for that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. my reads now, I start there, just and do the whole thing.
Yeah. So, do we have anything more on this chapter? We're only at chapter 1, folks, and we're 47 minutes.
I'm pulling sick to work tomorrow. Hold on.
It's like, we get there, and his bit caps off the end of chapter 1.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
And
where he goes and sneaks off to let Mionel know, hey, Lysair's people are, that, and nice little nod in the hearing when the ambassador's there, and everything with Arrow and all. The guy who was the carrying the testimony, he was the one that was complaining at the end during the scene at the Havens in Warhost. Where you had that pointed out, that one guy screaming, "That's my blah blah blah, that's my brother," and that was on one of the ships, or whatever. So that was a nice little carryover. It's like just one of those little bitty things, like with he didn't get as much fleshing out of Tharek, but it's like here's this little guy, who's complaining about what you're doing, and he comes back later to for that, and Lysair's like, oh, dark magic, blah blah blah.
Lysair doesn't truly believe that it was dark magic, does it? Like, really, it's sort of, or maybe I did miss something in it, but it feels like he doesn't, but almost that there's like a little part of him says it could be, you know what I mean? And that's really what he's preying on, because I still don't believe like Lysair's openly lying, if you know what I mean. I don't think he's totally in that state. But it's even when the Fellowship confront him, and he does start to sort of twist it and say, but you're only you're not doing this both ways. If you do this both ways, and he sort of tries to play with the Fellowship, which I thought was very brave of him. Which ultimately backfires, obviously, for sure.
Yeah, he was actually quite scared when the Fellowship first took him.
Yeah,
and but he finally came around, and he because he came to his defense, and he asked that question. He said, "If your hand is revealed as the root of our conflict, and tell me why have you not acted?" Which was, of course, a question that we've had all along. And then, of course, as Asander sets him straight on that question there. But and he's also said that the Fellowship has never been a force in Ethera to take guiding charge of human destiny. But the so that they give him an explanation, but he asked a legitimate question there. After being scared, and it was another question he asked. He asked, "Oh, by what right do you criticize my methods before you have broached your own failure?" And I thought that was a very pertinent question for Lysaea to ask those sorcerers.
Well, it's something that we brought up before, Jared, at the end of last book as well. The Fellowship are very happy for them to tear each other apart and not concerned about the world. Like, that seems odd. And again, address that was the question put to them at that stage. And I think it's sort of funny that the only thing that whips them into motion is this act of outlawing and having, like, almost martial law to say we can lock up anybody that we want for a limited reason. That seems to be the breaking point for the Fellowship, which seems odd.
Well, and it's tied into their charge for this world. It has nothing to do with humans. Of course, humans are very human centric on this world, and they're wondering why because the sorcerers, most likely they look human, so they probably want to and they want the humans think that that's what they can relate to them, but they're not there for humanity. And I thought it was interesting that I look at the year that she puts in here for the third age.
That's right, yeah.
And it's like it's over 4,000 years.
5,000.
This age has been going on. It's the year 45 or 56. Yeah, 5,000, over 5,000. And that's a long time to keep humanity in kind of the Middle Ages. You know what I'm saying? Without them expanding their technology further. And so that's directly the sorcerers doing, the Fellowship's doing. And so I thought that's those all those little things that are clues into the bigger picture here that of course we're not seeing everything yet. It's just wonderful.
I feel like Jared's setting himself up to take a particular side that's against the sorcerers.
They're siding with the townsmen.
Running under Lysaea's flag, methinks.
Just legitimate questions, that's all.
I knew it. There were definitely signs. This is definitely one of these ones where I make like a mixtape compilation of all the signs that led me to believe you were Count Dooku, for want of another for Star Wars reference.
Next time I'll come with a halo.
It's a backlight.
So for those keeping track, next time we're going to have introductory background music and halos.
Oh my god. I have a question again. I don't know if I was being an idiot or if I missed something again. What exactly did they do to Lysaea? I know they took away protection.
Okay.
But what does that... Or does it get explained later? Because at the moment I kind of like just went with it and was like, okay, maybe I'll find out. But
well, I mean, some people, obviously understand what it means, within the story itself. But so mankind arrived, first third age year one, and they with the Fellowship serving as arbiters, treated with the Paravians and were allowed to settle on Aethera. And Jenny's may have gone into some of this with one of our other earlier reads. I don't remember where. I transcribed it for her, so we could get it into the wiki and whatnot, but I don't remember which one it was, because I was listening to a bunch of them to put it all down. But they were specifically laid down, and that's how the clans and the High Kings were formed. Is they're specifically laid down at that time, what the terms of humanity being able to settle here was, and you had the townsfolk, who largely lived in coastal areas, because a lot of the land inward was Paravian territory, and they couldn't, as we saw in the Gallant, you can't just wander into that, with the Paravians there. Within the townsfolk could basically do whatever they want, barring certain actions such as you can't have slaves, and certain technologies, outlawed. And if they want to, but if they break any of those rules or whatnot, then the High Kings would be the ones to address, those specific issues. And then if it had to get escalated, the High Kings would serve as, intermediaries with the Paravians, because not everybody can withstand Paravian presence. And also the Fellowship would also, so it'd be like townsfolk have their own rule. High King serves an intermediary, in making sure the areas, prescribed lands stay, inviolate and whatnot, and address, things. If it escalates, then the High Kings, relay to the Fellowship, and then it's addressed there. And then, and then beyond that to the Paravians. By casting him out, none of that system any applies to him anymore. So should the Paravians return, he's no longer under the auspices of the Fellowship. They can't intercede for him. He would, have to deal directly with the Paravians.
So it has no direct consequence at the moment. It's only if the Paravians come back.
Right.
Did he not lose his powers then? Because that's the way I read it.
No, it wouldn't do that to him. It would just, because those were inborn and made to persist from generation to generation, basically genetically tied to him. So
they did allude to the fact that he couldn't use his powers straight away afterwards. I felt like it was just a visceral reaction to what had occurred rather than him losing his powers, and that's how I read it anyway.
It could be me projecting, hoping that's what happened to Lysair, rather than... Very possible.
Yeah. Speaking of Lysair's hair, there was one bit during his time in the when the Fellowship had him. His hair was no longer shining, and it was fallow, and I don't know, there were some words used that made me think it was no longer shiny. So has he kept his hair shining with his gift of light the whole time?
Probably wouldn't surprise me. He'd make himself.
Absolutely. It's part of his whole ethos, isn't it? He'll just go back to straw when he's still got his power.
No conditioner. He doesn't use conditioner, and then when he's using his magic, and then it's fine. I just have this great image on Varsha's wall in front of her. She has a timeline of Lysair's hair alongside.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna do it.
Quality of hair, strength of hair, color of hair,
I was actually thinking of doing a Bright Thread episode on Lysair's hair.
That would be a very good idea. The word you want to use in that episode is timbre, right? A hair should have a timbre.
Okay, so chapter 2, prophecy number 2.
Sorry, go ahead, Jared.
Jarrett has dreams, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
yes.
I know we met his wife for like 2 pages, but I love her already.
Ah,
I I love her so much. um, but yeah, that was another terrifying prophecy. Does anyone else feel like, knowing how the other books go, the thing that Jared dreamed about will happen in the middle of the book and not the end of the book?
I think I've said this before. Every time we get one of these prophecies, you think this is going to happen in like book 8.
Yeah.
This is going to happen like book 7, and just about every time it happens in the middle of the book, and you're like, "Oh God, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
This time you haven't got me."
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I fully agree with that. You just think it's going to be a far off thing we're going to build to, and then like, bam, you're right there. You're
Yeah.
like, oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, you're expecting a long, drawn out fantasy, and it's not happening that way. It's just not.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd think anything that would be a big event to build up to in most fantasy series is a middle of the book event in this one. Like, how do you do that? How do you build important thing after important thing? And we're seeing some of the seeds laid here, right? Like what we find out with Traith and having a part of his consciousness, what trapped with the rest of the Mistwraith. And they really, so this is interesting to me that they're not like, yeah, cool, whatever, like we're just not going to be able to heal traits now. They're like, no, we have more stakes added to the situation and we need to solve this problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not going to be a sacrifice.
But I think the book needs that, if you know what I mean. It can't just be that the Mistwraith is just linked to the end of the world and the fates of both of our characters, and that nobody else matters. It needed. I was again very glad to see the fact that somebody else had stakes in this other than Lysair, Arathon, you know, and the end of the world.
Absolutely, yeah.
It links their causes together, basically.
So it does.
Yeah.
So he's now Arathon has this this writ against him, this writ of arraignment. Where's that from? Says I have something here about Avenor, but I'm not sure who that is.
Avenor's Lysair's capital. You know,
so
that's
okay, all right,
right. Where he accuses him of dark sorcery.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's got this writ of arraignment, and so Jarrett's quite worried about that. Actually, they had this conversation over this arrest, and they actually had this argument, like, is it true, and all this stuff, because he doesn't actually see him that often, right? Because they're separated a lot, and so he doesn't know the full story of the whole war host in the Vastmark and all that stuff. And I thought that was just excellent repurposing a point of view on how the characters just we know a lot, but the characters don't. And that was an excellent way of showing that. And I loved how she did that. And she tied it into his dreams and his worry for Arathon over the fact that he's seeing him, get hanged or whatever it's going to be. And he's tying it closely into this writ of arraignment, or what is it like? It's like a arrest warrant. And so I thought that was beautifully done as well. But we mentioned earlier about Lysair putting on a show, but I also think Arathon does his part to put on a show as well when he kind of comes around a corner and says, I heard that. I'm surprised,
Yeah.
and you wonder how much of that was done on purpose on Arathon's part, and also how much of the show he put on to drive Jarrett away. Basically, it's to save his, what he wants to keep him safe. He's doing it for that purpose, but so there's a theme of showmanship going on here. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Arathon's very dramatic. Like
Mhm.
he's full of drama,
Yeah.
I think, as a person. But I think you said, Varsha, earlier, you said that with Lassie, you really saw the impact of the previous book and the events that happened in there. But obviously, again, you really saw them about how much Arathon is suffering from the atrocities and what happened in that. And it's really, and this is a really big opening, showing how much it's really affected him and his like confidence and his generalness with people. So yeah, it's drama and also trauma, I think.
Yeah.
On my review for the book, I started it off with like, because we know Arathon won at the end of the book. I mean, for as much as you want to call it a victory, I mean, he defeated Lysair. We can unequivocally say that. But I was like, in victory, despair.
Mm.
For Arathon, and then like for Lysair, it's like in defeat, pride, because Lysair's pride is definitely gotten broken, and he's just pricked there, and he's just like. I mean, even the Sabridian brothers actually, kind of predicted it at the end of Warhost when Arathon was talking to them. He's like, "You didn't just crush his Warhost here. You hurt his pride, and he's not going to let that go."
Yeah. I think, Jared, to your point about performance between the two, I think, that's a great point. But also, it feels like there's so much we can, if we just sit down and do a compare and contrast exercise between the two brothers. Arathon's performance is because he cares, and Lysa's performance it feels like it's because he doesn't. Like, he's putting on a show to manipulate, and so is Arathon, but it's because he wants to look out for Jared. But with Lysa, how do I say this? He doesn't think much of the people he's manipulating,
Yeah, he's doing it for his own goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming from a completely different place.
Yeah. And also, the thing we were just talking about, the impact of the war, the 35,000 deaths. Arathon's like completely internalized the fact of their deaths and is dealing with it, with that intense scene with Dakar, keeping watch overnight. That was, anyway. And Lysaid is just like shoving off all responsibilities, like, nope, not my problem. I'm going to pretend that that's someone else's fault. So I love the contrasting situations. Like, they are similar but so different, the two of them. Yeah.
And it's and Arathon's doing it out of compassion for Jarrett.
Yeah.
But there's still such a strong sense of tension the whole time you're reading it. And like, I was tense. I'm gripping the pages like this.
Yeah.
But do you find, again, back to how I said less earlier, do you feel like sometimes with what he says and what he does to people, he is also being an absolute just ass. Like, he's being horrible to these people, but because he's doing it from a place of he's trying to save them from something, or he's trying to push them away for an actual reason, you're still always behind him. Like, you know why he's doing it, so you're way more forgiving about, even though you're like, oof, that was a bit much, but you don't, at least I don't think he's a bad person. It's just
no, he has a more noble reason for doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And in some ways, like when Jared rushes across the country to find Arathon and finds Arathon and says, I've foreseen great problem, and Arathon's just like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. I'm in danger. Tell me something I don't know. Go away. You kind of feel you feel for Jared that he's left behind his wife and his family and everything that happened here to come across, and Arathon's almost dismissive of him.
Yeah.
And we know as the reader that he's doing it to protect him ultimately, because obviously there's things that go in the back of that. But just sort of worry for Jared, because Jared's still like a very, very young man, 21 or something. It's told at that time. He's trying to do his best, and he's linked to this lunatic, essentially, in some ways that just hides in the shadows until he can make a dramatic entrance in his full emo garb that he has. That would be an interesting thing in the film, exactly who they would cast him and whether they would just give him the kind of Robert Pattinson Twilight. I want it, but it's only because we have sympathy with Arthur but sort of forgive him for all of that. Rather, he's not exactly the best of people there either. He doesn't deal with problems head on. He doesn't talk to people. He doesn't do that. He does manipulate people. So some of the things that are levied at him are sort of right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What was I gonna say?
I'm not Team Lysair like Jared, but
I was going to say, are we having another person jumping
no,
ship?
definitely not. No.
Oh, Jared and Chris declaring themselves for Chris. Sorry, no, Lysair.
Lysair.
I'm all on Chris's side. I really am. So then we got was it Moriel?
Morale, yeah.
Oh yes.
And it's funny that they're trying to use they're trying to work some magic, and they fail, and of course they're blaming the Fellowship for this, and they're crying their lack of autonomy.
How arrogant was the magic they were trying to work?
Oh yeah,
you just
absolutely.
close a vent like you think it has no consequences whatsoever. Excuse me, have you studied some geography?
Yep. Yeah, that was.
And then she's being so angry at the Fellowship for not I guess in some ways, like I said, the condescension she has about the earth is like, oh, all those dead children mean less to you than the earth you're trying to protect. Like it's some inanimate thing that has no consequences whatsoever if you destroy it. Didn't you just flee from somewhere and seek protection here, and you want to destroy this over again? Like what's going on there? It feels like complete lack of insight. Yeah, I was really furious at Moria the whole time I was reading that chapter, if you couldn't tell.
It is hard to sympathize with the Coriani cause outside of Allura at the moment. Like there is no doubt, because it does feel like they just want the medal to be relevant rather than actually have a plan.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Consider, as we know, humanity arrived on, Aethera, which implies a spacefaring race.
Mm-hmm.
And the Coriani, predate the arrival on Aethera. So the Coriani's perspective, with, again, considering, different groups' priorities, like the Fellowship are concerned about the planet and Paravians, and the Coriani, of any of them, Moriel would be like, yeah, humankind was a starfaring race. And now they're just stuck here on this backwoods thing. And we as a group who had, all kinds of influence have been crippled and, can't do, so much of it's been restricted. So for their perspective is like, we're just stuck on this backwoods and I have all this information that I cannot use that would, make humanity ascendant and get them back out into the, space again.
Yeah. Yeah. And she asked them, she asked the sorcerers, why haven't you, basically, why did you stop me from killing him? And, or why did, Dakar jump in front of the arrow, what have you? But, and she tells them, you have the power to stop these people. And of course they dissemble and say, we don't, they're two grown men with free will and not string puppets. Their lives are not ours to use for expedience. And then she yells at them saying that's a pitiful excuse. And you act when you move to, and how else did 5 royal lines come by their gifts in the first place? And why should your wastrel apprentice have taken this arrow? And the curb powers of the Waystone established this point beyond doubt. And then Sethfair tells her that it's not us curbing the power; it's the earth itself is your arbiter.
Which is a interesting thing because she's not going to accept that, because we see it in the first bit, where she, goes to, she's just sitting there before she does the whole scrying with Lorinda, and she remarks on how she refuses to absolutely believe that the planet has any kind of awareness whatsoever. It's just rock. There's no awareness here, of any sort. She's like, I refuse to even consider that. It's just my brain playing tricks on me. Because, again, she's like, just, and she assumes that they've got some kind of agenda that she doesn't know. And like, well, obviously Dakar did this, at your instruction and not just doing it because he felt like, it was a thing he had to do.
And she's asking, what's so special about these blasted unicorns, basically.
So who wants to get a little bit of a mind blow here?
Oh,
I don't
always.
know.
So when they do their thing that restores the hearing of, her servant, right?
Yes, right. Yep.
And she erupts to screaming at them about how, they stood, the Coriani stood, was older than the Fellowship, or so she claims, and that they stood at the, right hand of human governance, blah, 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 blah. Before, and then she specifically mentions a name here, and this is one, if you remember,
Kincaid.
you might remember this. Callum Kincaid, sold out his great weapon. Does anyone remember a reference from an earlier book about that?
Oh,
sort of. No?
Was it when Asandir was telling the Brilliant brothers the story of how they came?
Well, that ties into it, but specifically, Curse of the Mistwraith. There's a little tidbit in the scene after Lysair curses Erethin, where they're pulling the wraith out of Lysair, and Asandir, I believe it is, one of them asks a question, and Asandir is like, "Let Cal work, and he'll tell you," referring to Sethvir.
Oh. So Callum Kincaid is Sethvir?
Wait a second, what?
Yes.
Do you know, there were several places in this book, or maybe at the end of the last book, where they're referring to what they may have been when they were younger.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of hints and tidbits that they put in when they're talking about like hands and about like what the strength you could have seen previously, where she's just jumping. I'm so annoyed because I'm gonna have to reread the entire series when I finish because of all these links.
Well, and the Sabridian scene in Ships, Asandir, talks about how they were summoned here by the Drakes, plucked out, in their out in their travels in the stars, because they were masters of destruction without parallel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing to consider: the Fellowship arrived in third or second age, early in the second age, like second age year 1, I believe, marks the point where they arrived on Aethera, summoned by the plucked out by the Drakes, and that is something like 22,000 years prior to where we are now. Because the second age lasts something like 17,000 years. It's a long time.
That was a long time.
Yeah. The humanity arrived, third age year 1, which is like 5,600 years or so ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But consider how long were they really? Was humanity really just wandering around?
Before that,
in space for aimlessly for 17,000 years, or is Muriel wrong about her statement? Well, both right and wrong.
Wait,
because
why?
The Drakes can warp reality.
And we need to talk about the time thing in just a sec. But I have a question. How did we get from the Coriani enchantresses were what advisors to the government, I suppose. But why did we conclude that there were 17,000 years wandering in space? Why would maybe they were just advisors to whatever planet they still were in, or do we think that they had to leave the planet around the time when the Fellowship also did?
Well, the conundrum here is we don't know precisely when. We know how long a second age is, but we don't know when, and that humanity, arrived on Ethera, right? Escaping the end of civilization.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know how long prior to arriving on Ethera the end of civilization was.
Mm.
So it's entirely possible that it wasn't that long prior to their arrival on Ethera that everything blew up. That she's talking about. Sold out the great weapon and all that. So the Seven may have, like when she says they're older than that, she's both right and wrong, because it's entirely possible the dragons plucked them not just out of space, but out of time.
Mm.
My poor brain.
Yeah.
My poor brain.
To really help things along, can I just float the idea? There's a very forceful female adept that appears multiple chapters in this.
Oh yeah, the Ats Adept.
That's adept, yeah.
Mm.
That
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, she's not named or anything, but it feels like she has some relevance.
Mm. Do we think she's the same one that Lysair met, or?
Yeah.
I
Before.
believe so. She might actually be the exact same one.
Yeah. And did Satvir and was it Traith discuss talking to the Adept about the rates on, what is that world's name, Makar? Like they could do something about it? I would imagine at Adepts at creator of the universe, so they should have scope outside of just Ethera. But it feels almost like the Fellowship thinks that the Adepts have powers they don't, or have abilities that, which begs the question, could they have done something about the Mistrait? And is it just a separation of responsibilities that made it the Fellowship's responsibility? Yeah.
My head. Ow.
All the big questions. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. I thought some of the stuff that she said to both to Lysair and to Sethvir were very interesting when she was talking about he's all like, oh, I'm gonna do this and blah blah blah. What does she say here? The Adept swept her feet relentless. Unstop your ears and listen, Zion of Seleucid. Persist on your present path and you shall gain your desires. As Lysair's blue eyes widened, she pressed him. Oh yes, your half-brother shall walk in the shadow you create, but not before you stand blackened enough to raise despair of a force sufficient to break him. And then later she is talking to Sethvir about how where if where did she put, where is that bit? Whereas if while Ath's order becomes maligned by false truth and the masses are fired to worship your Prince of the Light, rather Aerith and Cephalon Phalin becomes the spirit in mortal danger of corruption. Honestly, that's a very terrifying thought. Where Lysair raising up his little holy war would eventually, cause things to happen that would, turn Lysair or Aerith to become, the very thing that, Lysair's painted him as. That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
Well, there's confirmation right there. Guess Lysair's right. I mean,
Oh, Jan.
That's it. You're cast out.
Oh crap!
No fellowship intercession for you.
By the way, the fact that the meeting with Lysair happened outside of time, that's just thrown in there casually.
Yeah.
So the Fellowship, I guess we knew they could manipulate aspects of time because they were able to scry the Mistrate before and after certain instances, I suppose. But yeah, this was interesting that they just held a meeting outside time.
Just-
I think again, I'm going to bring back to the point of like sometimes it seems like they're not powerful, but they're kind of just normal, and then sometimes you're just like, oh wait, what a second, they're doing this crazy ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting that she kind of grounds again, like exactly that. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, outside time, that's normal, okay.
Yeah, let's just move on.
yeah.
We're not going to explain, which
No,
is
yeah, it
good.
just
I like
shows,
that.
just shows their ridiculous
Yeah.
powerfulness, isn't it? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah.
Did anybody? I don't know if anyone saw this, but I know I brought this up in like whenever we met her first. But Althea, is that how you say her name? Did anyone foreshadowing from this when they were having that meeting, they're discussing afterwards when they're meeting the head lady, and then he says that he doesn't think that the next prime is going to take
Oh yes.
place, and then said the only other person he thought that would potentially do it would be Althea, and I was just like, oh, okay, maybe is that a foreshadowing for her maybe having to take that place?
Yeah. I think.
Oh
Yeah, I think you mentioned it, Robin, that you thought that might happen, and yeah, that was interesting. But what Muriel saw at the end of the last book was that she dies, and then the line of Koryani matriarchs just dies along with them. It's possible that Ilera becomes the what matriarch?
Prime, Carian Prime.
Yeah, Koryani Prime, but like she'll maybe they'll work with the Fellowship instead of against them. Maybe nice things will happen. That's the stuff I'm being hopeful
It's
about.
going to be beautiful. I love it.
And they lived happily ever after.
Amazing.
Although, Sethvia called that a frightening collusion, if that were.
Oh
to
yeah,
Yeah.
So who knows?
But yet we had the chapter where Morel brings Lorenda in to kind of force through her training, so to speak, to kind of don't you sit in the sideline and let me take over. And Lorenda is sort of emboldened by the whole experience, but yet obviously I would imagine to her downfall as this will come, she will be proved not to be worthy or not be ready when the time comes.
Yeah, there seems to be something lacking in her abilities or character that she just doesn't seem quite ready for it yet.
I thought it was interesting when they were in the stone. Lorenda first fears the power, and then when she realizes what can be done with once she's overcome her fear, she's like, yeah, I would like to manipulate that. I would like to put that to use. And that's scary. Someone who switches so quickly from fear to I want to absorb this power and put it to use. Like, why would you want someone like that to lead an order? Like that, I feel like that tells us something about the order itself. The craze for power is the person with the most craze for power is at the head of it. Well, not exactly. I'm sure there are other characteristics that define the next successor, but that they're okay with. Like, this is not considered a flaw, right? For someone who needs to be perfect. I thought that was interesting. I also really. Sorry, Robin, you were going to say.
No, I was just going to say, I think that backs up our whole kind of understanding of the order in general, and I fully agree. Like they go through this vigorous training. They've had 43 failures. Like the fact that exactly that's kind of what they're forcing all of those people to be, I think shows that although, like you said, it's sad that they appear to be having overshadowed by the Seven, all their power taken away. But it doesn't sound like they're using that power for anything that would be good at all. It just seems like hungry, power grabbing, do what we can sort of thing. So I think exactly that. It's not a great reflection on their order.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I did feel sympathetic towards them in the last book when we were told that they used the Waystone to protect people from disease, to ward off storms, and basically stop a lot of hurt from happening. But I think in this book, it's become clear that the actions they took could have much more widespread consequences. Sure, you're saving a few lives here, but maybe you're disbalancing the earth to the point where everything comes to an end a few centuries later or whatever. So the Fellowship has a much more long-term view of everything. And yeah, I'm feeling more sympathetic towards the Fellowship, right? Like earlier it was, you're not intervening, 35,000 people dead and you're doing nothing about it. But if you're looking at it on the time scale of the planet's existence, on the fate of races other than humanity, and especially the Paravians, whom we are told again casually that they were wrought from the prime source itself. I'm feeling much more sympathetic towards the Fellowship in this book. Oh, also, the Waystone, when they were inside, that it was basically crazy because it was being used to manipulate so many things. It feels like, so it reminded me the way the Waystone was being described, or the matrices inside was being described. It reminded me of the end of Curse of Mistray, when Arathon undoes something, like he does something he shouldn't by changing the direction of arrows or something. Like whatever he does that destroys him, it's not in keeping with the major balance, right? Like he performs a spell of unweaving or something like that. I don't remember what it was called at the time, but it was very destructive what he did. And the way the Waystone was being described, it felt similar. Like it's not working with nature, it's working against it. And that's why it's being driven mad, and as like it's used to do more and more such negative or destructive magic, I guess. Did anyone else feel that, like that? Yeah.
Yeah, like the crystals, retain, the imprint of the things done with them, and it's however old it is and has never been, had it been cleansed or, had any of that erased. So, and I think mentions there's like failed, the spirits of failed, or imprints of, failed aspirants to the prime seat, trapped inside it. So, or at the very least, there's like their memories, and they're all just imprints of their personality that are just trapped in there.
Yeah.
I did feel like rather than going to shout at the seven to kind of like change the, I'd be like, can you just clean this for me? That'd be really helpful if you could just clear this a little bit. But,
yeah. But also apparently they couldn't clear it because that was the only, there were very few things that had memories of their knowledge from before they came to this planet, which I guess knowledge of technology is included in that. So if they cleaned it up, they would lose that knowledge. But maybe the Fellowship could have done something that would keep the knowledge but destroy the madness.
Yeah, well, part of it is they've got their own little collection that they brought with them, but they can't use any that are mined on Ethera for they're restricted from being able to use that, so they don't have any place to put it.
Yeah.
If they had a place to put it, she probably would have cleansed it a long time ago, but then saved the stuff that the stuff that she needs, and and then it wouldn't be like, hey, look, this is an insane this crystal is insane and it wants to kill me.
Well, I'm sure if Lysaea and Arathon were to work together, they could certainly cleanse this stuff. They were so busy fighting each other.
And pigs would fly, and the Koreani and the Fellowship would work together.
Yeah. Why can't we all just get along here? It's great.
Good point.
So this is all in 3 chapters.
Yes.
And we
Yeah.
only have 11 more to go in here. It's
Oh,
great.
Jesus, Mary.
Yeah.
Also, since you held up the older paperback edition, and I remember Varsha mentioned that earlier. I'm still baffled about the differences in like print and everything, because Varsha said it was like 130 pages, but it's like 160 in that edition.
It
Look
is,
at
yeah.
the
There's 3
font.
chapters.
Yeah.
Look at that font size.
I really appreciate the difference in font size. It again gives it a freshness. I don't know. That's something weird to me about having a different font to read in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I did not like the font of the first 3 books. I need, this is too small, but the one in the first 3 books was too big. Something in in the middle would be perfect. I think Jared, your copy has the perfect size font.
Really.
Yeah, it's really odd comparing the older versions and the newer paperbacks. So just like it's so random. It's like one's larger than the other, and I'm like, why is this
Yeah.
so much bigger than
Yeah.
the other version? And
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I need my reading glasses no matter what size it is. So.
Yeah. I needed my glasses.
I can't wait till Sarah gets old enough that he needs reading glasses. That is going to be a good part of the book as well. With his lightening of his hair and his, and a bad prostrate, and all these things will be.
I feel like it could work as illusions of light to make things look. He doesn't need the glasses.
He's had his protection removed.
I don't know if I want to read 20 pages of Lysaea complaining about his old age. But...
Well, you say that. You say that.
You say that, right?
We had to read through the childbirth sequence and went, oh, wasn't it written beautifully?
It will be, yeah.
Yeah. Was there anything else? I feel like we've missed something, but that's fine. We've been going on for a while. We'll get it next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a very good chance that we have missed something.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Even though we've been going for an hour and a half.
Over a whole lot about Seth Fear figuring out where Trace, and I think we mentioned it briefly, but where that's like, oh wait, Trace, the rest of whatever is damaged, missing pieces of Trace's spirit may be holed up under the in the seals under Rockfell. So
yeah.
So like, hey, we could maybe put him back together again.
But at this cost.
Yeah.
Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah. That did remind me of something else that I wanted to talk about. The Fellowship. They've had their charter for coming up on 30,000 years now. I loved in this chapter we got to see them vulnerable. The adept felt sorry for them for how long they have been paying attention to detail, and this in the last few books I didn't get the impression that their responsibilities were weighing on them. It felt like they're just carrying on, but we got to see many of them in vulnerable situations, or like looking vulnerable or feeling weary of their charge, and they're not looking to retire anytime soon. They're trying to actually restore to 7 so that they can keep protecting the planet. And I just felt very deeply sympathetic towards them again.
It is. It's like you consider it's like it's a staggering amount of time.
Yeah.
Like, I know we get fantasy novels and they'll cover huge, swaths of times, and I don't think we really think about it, but frankly, just you can't even really process that.
Yeah.
When your lifespan runs, 100 years if you're lucky.
Yeah. That was in it's not really a spoiler for Malazan. There are some races that live a very long time, and there's a conversation between a human with a human lifespan and one of the long-lived races, and it was a conversation about how it feels to live so long, I think, or at least that comes up in the conversation. And he says, the immortal dude says, how do you feel in your old age? Now take that and drag it out for several thousand years, and that's how I feel. So this reminded me of that. Like, I think Seth, where there was one point where it said, when he touches Straith, he says there's something about feeling his age through that contact. So yeah, I have since come to conclude that this is the only way to write immortality, like show the weariness of the age, right? Which is one of the reasons why Cities in Flight is annoying to me, but we'll talk about that in the next discussion.
Let's not bring that up.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
And-
So now I can start reading again.
Yes.
Yeah. Been a
Okay.
long wait for you,
That's
Jared.
great.
Yeah.
So catch up if you're behind.
Yeah. We are going at the slow, relaxed pace of 3 chapters every 2 weeks, which didn't feel like much when we started, but now, yeah. I think we'll try 3 again next week, but if it still feels like a lot, maybe we'll consider going down to 2. Do you think?
Yeah, there's only about 110 pages in the next
Yeah.
3, so it should be
Okay. Yeah.
No problem.
easier. But it's
Yeah.
oh my God, it's so much, and
Yeah.
it's like properly exciting.
Yes. I want to talk about everything.
Everything. Yes.
Cool. Anything else that we should discuss before we wrap it up? All right. I will randomly pick now again. Then, Jared, do you want to do outros?
All right. You can find me on the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and you can also find me on Page Chewing if that's where you want to go check that out. And Chibipo.
All right. As always, Chibipo. I'm Chibipo on Twitter, Chibipo on Page Chewing, Chibipo on Blue Sky, and Chibipo on YouTube. But I don't have anything there, so. But I'll still answer if you message me or anything. Can you message people on YouTube? I don't know.
No, you can
But I
go
have all
leave
the
comments
places.
on the videos, but that's it. I kind of wish we could message people on YouTube. But...
You used to be able to.
Oh, really?
They took it away. Yeah.
I will pick Chris.
Oh.
I was kind of hoping you'd be last again, just for fun.
I feel like starting the theme tune now, but my mind's not blank, so I'll just say you can find me on my YouTube channel at Chris Mohan. You can find me on Twitter, 7 o'clock Shadow. Although, to be honest, I think once Twitter goes, I'll go off that kind of form of social media. Or you can find me in the Page Tune forums. And I will pick. I don't really have much of a choice because it's Varsha's channel and she's hosting the chat, so she'll have to go last. So, Robin, I'd be delighted if you'd go next.
I feel so special. Thank you. No, yeah, my name's Robin. Our YouTube channel, Bookends and Biscuits. Find me on Twitter under the same name or on the Page Tuning forums, so we will like to discuss stuff. So yeah, and I shall hand over to Varsha for the closeout.
Thank you. You can find me, of course, on my channel, Reading by the Rainy Mountain. The About page has other ways to reach me. I hang out on the Page Tuning forum all the time, which consider joining us there if you'd like to read this book along with us. Join us here on these discussions or just chat with us on the forum about these books or anything else that you're reading at the moment. We'll see you guys again in 2 weeks with discussion on the next 3 chapters. Bye.
Pre-order the last book.
Yeah, pre-order.
Yeah.
March 23rd.
It's up on Amazon now.
The cover is out and it's beautiful and a lovely yellow. Oh, nice. And it's up for pre-order on Barnes & Noble. Is it up on Amazon yet? I don't
Amazon
think...
US is up now, yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Amazon UK, and there's a listing on Amazon Australia, but it's like, I don't know what's up with it because it also says in the description release date 2060. So I don't know what's going on there.
That's a hell of a wait.
Okay. Oh, I have to ask Janny about Australia because I had someone comment asking about how to order the book in Australia. But yeah, I'll have to remember to do that. But cool. We'll see everyone in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Bye.